Good morning, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, as Jonathan said, my name's Susan. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist here at Henry J. Austin Health Center, which is our federally qualified health center here in Trenton. I have the pleasure and the privilege to be serving the community at the health center, and I've been here for 10 years. I've been a registered dietitian for 40 years. I hate to say that. Makes me sound really old. And I'm also a Trenton community member. So being able to serve my community with my profession in this capacity is something that I enjoy. So hopefully today I'll give you some tips that help you nutritionally as well as fiscally in these times. All right, so I already introduced myself. I don't need to tell you about the food prices. That's why we're here, but I thought to just give a little overview of all the things, and this is certainly not exhaustive, all the things that contribute to what we're seeing in the grocery store, at our corner stores, at our convenience stores and restaurants right now, and why food prices are up, like 10% in general, depending on the item since the last year. We certainly are seeing the continued effects of the COVID pandemic and the supply chain. And we've been hearing that, for a couple of years now. But I think some of the things we don't think about is that over the last couple of years, employees have been more competitive. So that there's been salary increases, rightly so, for grocery stores, farmers, the whole chain of where our food comes from. There's shortages of employees, which demands higher salaries. And also there's been a lot more messages for food and training for food safety. So, with the global concerns, we need to, the USDA and all the way down the food chain need to make sure that we keep our food sources safe for the population. Obviously, transportation, we rely hugely on truckers to get our food where it's going, especially here in New Jersey in the winter when we rely on warmer states and warmer countries for a lot of our produce. The global events, the war in Ukraine, wheat is tied up and going bad in warehouses there. That affects supply and demand. Our environmental problems, drought, floods, things like that destroy product, destroy crops, and our farmers are aging out. It's difficult to make a living as a farmer, and drought obviously affects them, affects the price of feed for cattle, chicken, and all that kind of stuff. So I think, we complain at the food store, we're concerned about our food bills, but all these things that are happening in the world have just kind of come into a perfect storm, and we're all suffering the consequences. Unfortunately, a lot of these things, we don't see a short end in sight. So one of the biggest things we can do to combat food prices and also make healthy choices is to take time to plan. I know our time is precious, but if we invest some time initially, it pays off in the long run. So it will save us money. And like I said, it will make us, if we take a little bit of time to think about and plan what we're going to eat, what our menu items are going to be, what we're going to keep in our cupboards and our freezers and refrigerators, it will help us nutritionally as well. We know from a study from Penn State that the average American household wastes about $1,800 worth of food per year. That's a lot. So besides, planning and grocery shopping and how to save money, today we're going to talk about how we can kind of be proactive so we don't waste food at home and things don't go bad, and how we can kind of cook once and use it twice. When we plan, like I said, we're a little more mindful and not making rash decisions at the grocery store. So if we plan and make a list and try and stick to that list, we're more likely to make those healthy choices. One thing that I think, I have done in the past, and I'm sure all of us have done, is we shop at the grocery store, or we stop by last minute on the way home from work, and we haven't really taken stock at what we have at home. And I'll buy an extra can of tomato sauce, and I'll get home and I'll have 3 cans of tomato sauce just because it was on sale. But there, in and of itself, I've spent some money that I haven't needed because I already have one or two in the pantry. So we're going to talk about doing that, taking stock of what we have at home. And then sitting down with the family and planning, we can take into account different people's dietary needs and preferences, so that when we do cook a meal or pack a lunch, we know that it's going to get eaten and not wasted. So how do we plan and where do we start? So gathering kind of what your go-to meals are and what the family likes to eat, especially the evening meal, is a good place to start. That's usually the meal that's going to have the biggest price tag for you, that the items usually cost more, and you're usually making more of a variety at the evening meal for most of us. To start, what you can do is just start by choosing what kind of your main entree is going to be. You don't have to do a whole elaborate menu, but figuring out, like I say, your main entree item, and then building around that item what produce or what side dishes may be on sale at the grocery store that you use. So something simple. I just gave you kind of an idea of what maybe a healthy week would look like. And you could write it down and post it on the refrigerator. So if your significant other or your teenage child gets home before you from work, they know what's for dinner. They can start prepping the items, and it can save you time and money and get the whole family involved in helping whoever the primary cook and nutritional gatekeeper is at home. Okay, so think about cooking once and eating twice. So, roasting or making something on Sunday when you may have a little more time, and reusing it on Tuesday. A roast chicken or even a rotisserie chicken can be used, for leftovers. So think about that. In order to be healthy, think about a meatless Monday. And we don't always have to have, a protein, a typical protein, a meat, chicken, or fish for dinner. And so that's just kind of, and then you can actually think about being healthy. If you want to cut down on red meat, then you can look and, kind of make sure you get 3 days of chicken entrees, 2 days of fish, a meatless one, and maybe every couple of weeks of red meat. So it kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of, kind of where to start. So once you have an idea of what your family's meals are, what you would like to cook, maybe a new recipe that you saw that you'd like to incorporate into a meal for the week, start thinking about, now you need to make sure you have the ingredients for these things. So start at home. Like I said, look in the freezer, your refrigerator, and your pantry. if you can find, there's so many grocery lists. You can Google healthy grocery list on the web. You can kind of get one and put it in your notes on your phone and start a template for a grocery list of the things you usually buy. And then take an inventory of what you have at home so that you're not, buying duplicates. The easiest way to do that is try to the best of your ability to keep your refrigerator and pantry as organized as you can. Make your list based on your main menu items, and also looking at your sales flyers, circulars, coupons. There's online price comparisons in your on the phone that you can use. At the end of the presentation, I have a couple different websites for different things that we're talking about today. And one of them is called flip.com, and it gives you prices of different items in your area so you can compare and see where the best deals are. Remember that especially this time of year, purchasing foods at the farmers markets are both fiscally better as well as nutritionally better. They're locally grown. We're supporting local farmers. As I mentioned, they're certainly struggling. They're usually packed more with a nutritional value because they haven't sat on a truck or on a grocery store shelf losing their vitamins and everything, being exposed to air and sun for a long time after they're picked. And they're usually, because they don't have to be transported as far, they're usually lower in price. So think about, taking a kind of a field trip with the kids or grandkids or your significant other to a farmer's market this summer. For those of us who struggle with making ends meet, visiting a local food pantry is a really good idea. You can get your staples like rice or canned tuna, things like that. And then you can leverage what funds you have for your food, and you don't need to buy those staples. You can put it toward the more expensive items like chicken or fish or fresh produce if you choose. One of the habits that a lot of us have developed and have actually been very handy over the last couple of years is ordering online. Certainly it's a time saver, and if that works for you, that's great. Just remember, we do pay a price for the delivery, usually, whether it's an annual price, tips, things like that. So think about if you want to save time. Certainly you can order online, but then pick up at the store. That tends to be a little bit more, a little cheaper to do it that way if you want to save time and you don't want to, for whatever reason, health, safety, or time-wise, you don't want to be walking up and down the aisles of the grocery store. As far as shopping online goes, just a word to the wise that food items and meals as a rule from our meal delivery services like DoorDash, Uber Eats and stuff really aren't the most responsible choices for your budget, as I'm sure most of you have seen over the last 2 years. More shopping tips, like we said, farmers markets or fresh foods in season. Locally, our ShopRites and Giants and stores like that have been purchasing items from local farmers. So you may even be able to find those items in your grocery store. Like I said, use websites for comparison pricing. Don't be afraid to buy frozen and canned items. They're usually cheaper. They won't go to waste if you don't get to them. So you won't be wasting food, which translates into wasting money. And frozen and canned items are either flash frozen or canned within 24 hours of being picked, most times even shorter. The cannery or the factory is right next to the field where the large farm is, and it seals in the nutrition. So especially when you're looking for produce or fruits and vegetables in the wintertime, when it doesn't grow in New Jersey, and you are paying an overhead for the gas from the trucker and everything else in that supply chain. Don't feel like you're jipping your family's health or your nutrition by buying frozen and canned. Just remember the canned, you're going to want to rinse, kind of drain and rinse and get off the salt water. If it's packed with salty water, you can get rid of about 40% actually of the sodium by doing that. Excuse me. And then frozen, obviously you want to buy frozen vegetables that are just the vegetables, not spinach and cream sauce or cheese sauces and things like that, because then you're getting up extra fat and extra sodium. A lot of people think that buying in bulk saves us money, and it just kind of makes sense, but it's a good idea to be careful with that. If the item is something that is perishable or will go bad, really think about, am I going to use all this in the amount of time before it goes bad? Certainly if it's something that you could bring home and cook and freeze, that's great. The other thing to watch is with bulk and larger container items, compare not the price necessarily and just kind of looking at the size of the package, but there's also on the bottom of every shelf, there's a little unit pricing tag. It's usually on the edge of the shelf, and it tells you what the price is, usually per ounce or per pound or per unit. And compare that. Sometimes you'll be surprised that the smaller, canister of coffee per ounce is cheaper than the larger one. So buying 2 of the smaller one may be cheaper. So just don't assume that things in bulk are necessarily going to be cheaper when they're packaged. If you like to go to some of the grocery stores that have the ingredients like in the picture in the bulk bins, that's probably the cheapest way to go. But once again, just be careful and make sure that you're going to use that item. Some of us are, concerned, rightly so, about food safety, like I mentioned, and we won't use anything that's past the date on the package. So once again, one of the references at the end of the talk is a good USDA information on what labels mean. Best if used by, sell by. They don't necessarily mean expiration date, and it doesn't mean that if you eat it, you'll get sick. Most of the best buy, sell by, use by dates are a matter of quality. So, there are exceptions. Baby food and baby formula, there's no exception. If whatever the date is, you can't use it after that date. People can't sell it. Food pantries can't give it away. Dollar stores can't sell it. But certainly other items that are non-perishable, cans, boxes of cereal, it might not taste as fresh. Certainly there might be some vitamin loss in old cans, but there's guidelines depending on the item as far as how far past the sell-by date you can use things. The sell-by date is usually for grocery stores, so just to give them a guideline of when they should sell it by. A lot of the sell-by dates are for perishable stuff like milk, eggs, yogurt, but they're usually good for a good 5 days after the sell-by date. And of course, you can always use the sniff test. It's not, as reliable, but just be mindful that if there's something in the cupboard a can of beans that you want to use, and the best if used by date is 6 months ago, it doesn't need to be thrown out. Some things just to remember when you do go to the grocery store is don't shop hungry. We know that, and there's studies that show that when we shop and we're hungry, we tend to, those Doritos or the ice cream kind of tend to hop in the cart, and we open them in the car because we're hungry. So just try not to go hungry. There's pros and cons of taking our children grocery shopping. We can teach them about what's healthy. It's a great teaching experience. We can also see what their preferences are so that we buy a vegetable that maybe they're interested in trying rather than something they're not and that they won't eat and might go to waste. The downside of taking children to the grocery store is there was a study done about 10 years ago in one of the educational institutions in Boston, and they looked at people who took their kids to the grocery store, and they found out that they spent on average about 30% more for their grocery bills than when the adult went by themselves with a list. So just also be aware, that taking our children, they may ask for things that we wouldn't necessarily buy. So kind of have to, make your own decision as far as doing that. Shop the store brand and the generic labels as much as you can. The quality is usually the same, and you can save money with that. Avoid the end caps. The end caps are the ends of the aisles where they put what's considered sale items. They're not always so. So, the grocery stores are marketing what they make the biggest profit on, what they have the biggest markup on. They're kind of called loss leaders. So things that they need to get rid of that, like I say, that they can make a bigger profit on. So try to be smart about shopping on those end caps and really compare pricing. Try and avoid spending on empty calories. What do I mean by empty calories? So for, buying healthy food, empty calories are foods that give us a lot of calories. They usually taste really good, but nutritionally, they don't give us any bang for our buck. So examples of empty calorie foods are chips, soda, ice cream, cakes, pies, those kind of things. They, like I just said, they give us a lot of calories, but they don't give us any vitamins, any minerals. They usually give us a lot of sugar, salt, fat, things that work against our health and not for our health. Some grocery stores have kind of these shelves or areas in the back where they put some either dented things, damaged things that are starting to go bad. Some grocery stores, the butchers put, any leftover meats and stuff in a certain section. A lot of times it's early Sunday mornings, and you can get discounts on meat. So that's always something, if there's somebody behind the meat counter at your grocery store, to ask them, do you ever put things, do prices go down, or do you ever put any of the stuff that's been out for a couple days that's at the sell-by date? That's usually what happens. You look at the meat or the chicken and it's getting close to the sell-by date, and if it's at the sell-by date, they'll discount it. If you're not going to use all that, you can certainly buy it in bulk and then freeze it. As long as you freeze an item by the sell-by date, items like chicken or any kinds of cuts of meat or anything like that. And then once you go to use them, as soon as you defrost it, you must use it for food safety reasons. Your meats and your chicken, you're paying for the processing to be done more. So, boneless, skinless breast of chicken or chicken thigh is going to cost you more per pound, that unit price, than one with the bone in that you do the work yourself. Like I said before, there's pantries in the area for those, who come up short at the end of the month, or, want to stretch their dollar as much as they can. Check them and the items you can get there before you shop, so that you don't go to the pantry the day after you go to the grocery store and you get more rice or more tuna or more things that you don't necessarily need. So once you're home, how can you extend your food? How can you make the most of your meals to be healthy, and make your dollar go farther? So all your things like beans, lentils, all your legumes are a great, cheap, healthy way to kind of make your meals go further. By that, I mean, use them like a meat. And you don't have to use them completely in place of a meat if you think, some of your family members wouldn't want that. But taking a can of black beans, rinsing them, and getting kind of an old school mashed potato masher and mashing them up and mixing them in with your ground turkey or your ground beef. If you're making, a spaghetti and meat sauce, you can extend that pound of ground turkey by mixing a similar texture with your beans in there. And maybe you can get 2 meals out of that pound of ground turkey or lean ground beef. Mushrooms are a great extender for that as well. They tend to hold, as a vegetable, they kind of tend to taste a little more the texture like a meat item. So the more beans, lentils, plant items you can work into your meals, the healthier and the more budget friendly. The price of eggs has gotten a lot of attention. Yes, egg prices have gone way up, but ounce for ounce, protein, gram per protein, they're still cheaper than a steak or chicken and things like that. So, think about eggs for a main course. They don't just have to be for breakfast. So, maybe your meatless Monday is a frittata or omelets or something like that. Quick, easy. You can add a lot of vegetables to egg dishes and things like that. If weight management and control has been a goal for you, or you're on that journey, remember that you can save money if you eat less. So, kind of check yourself. Remember what you've, taught or what your goals are as far as managing your portion sizes, and try and make, some of the items that you prepare last for more than one meal by eating a little bit less. Canned protein is a great way to kind of save money. Canned salmon is certainly cheaper than fresh and even frozen, but just as healthy. All the good omega-3 fatty acids. Don't pick your bones out of your canned salmon or your canned mackerel. They're nice and soft, and they're a great source of calcium. Another canned fish that some of us wouldn't think of eating necessarily when we think of canned fish is sardines. So packed in olive oil, you certainly do have to have a taste for them. But if you like sardines, they're a great item to use, and they're relatively inexpensive. When we're talking about bulk items, certainly your healthy grains are a good way to buy things to buy in bulk. They don't go bad really quickly. Oats, quinoa, brown rice, barley, bulgur wheat, all really good whole grains. Buying them in bulk are cheaper. As far as using them as a side dish for your main meal, or even your main meatless meal, one tip I can give you is cook them in bulk. Sometimes the brown rice or the quinoa take a long time to cook, whereas white rice might be a little bit quicker. So, cook it in bulk, get either Ziploc bags, freezer bags, or containers that you have, and freeze it in the portion sizes that you need for another meal. And then it's real easy to just pull the whole grains out of the freezer and zap it in the microwave. Another whole grain that's really good is farro. And they sell frozen brown rice in the freezer section. So certainly you can do that yourself and save you money. Think about making your own snacks. Things like popcorn have a lot of added fat and salt, and you can just pop them from the kernels in a brown bag in your microwave. Really simple and easy. You don't even need to add oil. And you can find, a YouTube tape video that, how to pop popcorn in the microwave with, at home. You can make homemade trail mix or granola mix and kind of pick and choose what healthy nuts or pumpkin seeds, things like that you want without, a whole lot of the dried fruit if you want to stay away from the sweetness. And then you can freeze fruit. I remember years ago, somebody told me, oh, if your bananas are going bad, rather than wasting them, you can freeze them. Well, I just took the banana and put it in the freezer, and boy, did I learn the hard way that once you thaw it, you can't get the skin off it too well. So the best way to freeze a banana is to peel it first. You can freeze it whole and then use it in smoothies or banana bread or muffins. You can also peel it and slice it in little slices and put it on a cookie sheet, put the little slices and the little discs on a cookie sheet and freeze them. And then after about 2 hours, take them out, put them in a Ziploc bag and kind of use them for a little snack or treat. You can do that with grapes. You can do it with all sorts of frozen fruit, blueberries, strawberries, but don't cut them and then put them in the bag all together because they're going to be damp because you've washed them, and then they're all going to be like a clump, like when ice starts to melt and then you put it back in the freezer, then it'll just all clump together. So, once we kind of try and think a little bit ahead, maybe we don't start with a whole week's worth of menus, but maybe we have time to really think about, planning for a couple days a week to start. You have your items that you need, you've been to the grocery store, and you get home, and we really want to think about, okay, now that we've invested money in some of these healthy items, how can we make sure that we don't waste them once they get home? Remember that the warmest part of your refrigerator is the door. When we open it, it has the most exposure, plus it has the most exposure just naturally to the outside. So don't store a lot of your pretty perishable stuff on the door. A lot of refrigerators years ago used to have the egg container on the door. We would see milk getting put on the door. So try those kind of things, don't put on the door. The coldest part of your refrigerator is in the back and on the bottom shelf. So your dairy and your eggs and things like that, store there. Be mindful that certain fruits give off a gas that makes them go right quicker. So you don't want to store these particular items with other fruits and vegetables, because then they're going to make the gas they give up will make those other fruits and vegetables go right quicker. So, you don't want to put your apples in a bowl on the counter with your peaches, because then if you have 4 or 5 peaches there, they're going to go ripe really quick and fast. And then you may end up, wasting some of them. So try and store those items separately, or put them on a bowl in bowls separately. Like I mentioned in the last slide, freezing is a great way when things start looking like they may be going, getting to the point where they're the ripest they're going to get, and you don't know if the family's going to make it through eating it all rather than waste it. If you're not a big bread eater, put the whole loaf of bread in the freezer. And if you want a sandwich, just pull out the 2 pieces that you want. It'll thaw out in like 10 minutes. You can make your sandwich with frozen bread and pack it and take it for lunch. And you can, make toast really easy. So think about, don't leave the bread in the bread drawer, especially, a couple weeks ago when it was so warm out. I had, patients that I talked to said their bread, started to go moldy. They didn't realize they could put it in the refrigerator or the freezer. Wash any berries like strawberries, blueberries, blackberries. Don't wash when you get them home. I know it can be easy, and then it's easier for the whole family to eat them. But as soon as we wash them and get them wet, they're at more risk for going moldy quicker. So be careful with that. Think about FIFO. FIFO means first in, first out. So if you come home from the grocery store and you bought some more yogurt or you bought more milk, move the cartons or the containers of the yogurt that you already had out of the refrigerator, put the new ones to the back, and then bring the older ones to the front, so that when you go to grab the carton of milk, you're not opening the one that's brand new and the older one got stuck in the back somewhere and goes bad. Something to think about, and another kind of incentive for those of us, and most of us these days are, concerned and want to do what we can for the environment, that the more food waste that goes into the landfills, the more methane gas is, food waste gives off the methane gas as well, which affects the environment. So the more we can do to, not contribute to that, that's one small way we can make a difference, both to our food budget and to the environment. Food needs the cold air in the refrigerator and the freezer to stay at the proper temperature. So try and avoid overstuffing your refrigerator and freezer. There should be some air circulation in there to keep things fresh. And like I mentioned, try to avoid the actual meal delivery services, that actually deliver your lunch to you or deliver your meals. I couldn't believe I paid, more one time, it seemed like, for the DoorDash delivery and taxes and everything that the item actually cost. So just be careful about that. That's no way to really kind of be responsible with your budget. So that's my presentation. There's a couple things last minute that I didn't include that I just want to go over. I didn't talk about, when we want to be healthy as far as organic food goes. We know when we go into the grocery store, the organic is usually more expensive. And organic basically doesn't reflect on the nutritional quality of the food per se. It's more about how that food was grown and handled without pesticides and additives and things like that. So for those of us who, are concerned and want to, feed our family things that don't have chemicals and pesticides, it's nice to know what foods are organic. And there's a website called ewg.org, I believe. And every year they look at a ranking of what the USDA ranks as the items that have the most pesticides use. And it's called the Dirty Dozen list. So one of the things you can do is kind of familiarize yourself with what items are on that Dirty Dozen list. And if you want to buy things that are organic, they're the ones to kind of invest your money in. They're the ones that are going to have the highest rate of chemicals and pesticides on them. And, then there's also a list of the ones that have the lowest. So those things, maybe you don't spend the extra money on buying organic. So that's just a tip as far as, when to buy organic, when not to. So that's, I don't know how we are on time.
You want to answer some of the
Yeah,
questions?
so let's see if I can answer some questions.
So the first question is, do you have any tips on how to keep vegetables fresh for longer, I guess?
Right. So I guess, like we talked about, try those ones that give off the methane gas that I listed, kind of keep them separate from other ones. They sell a lot of nice kind of glass containers that have almost like a little drain underneath them. So if you're gonna pre-wash and pre-cut your vegetables, you can put them and seal them in containers that are sold for that reason. And then lettuces and herbs and stuff. Herbs you can just stick in a glass jar, kind of like flowers, and keep them in your refrigerator. Even put a little plastic Ziploc bag on the top to keep them from going bad. You can cut them and wrap them in like a damp paper towel in a Ziploc bag. Lettuce does well with that too. So yeah, and then just like I say, if you see that they're starting to go bad, cut them and freeze them or prepare them, even if you're not going to use them that day. Cook some vegetables and then freeze them for using in soups and stews and things like that.
Next question is on canned evaporated milk. Do you think that it would be safe if it's 6 months past its expiration date?
That's about, canned items, they say upwards of a year. So, as long as it's not dented, rusted, it should be fine. And of course, if you open it and it has a foul odor, you wouldn't want to use it, but 6 months should be fine for a canned item like that.
Are there any products that you recommend as alternatives to seasoned popcorn? So, replacing the salt or the butter.
Right. So so things like chili powder, garlic powder. If you look in the seasoning aisle, there's actually some popcorn seasoning with different kinds of flavors. They can be a little bit salty. So, making your own, like I say, you can even, if you want to get some antioxidants in, make your own little, maybe chili powder with some onion powder. You can throw a little turmeric in there if you want, some ground pepper. So things like that, on your own, just sprinkle on the popcorn.
Do you think the idea of organic food, I guess like the importance of it, has been praised by the media?
There's always going to be people that are passionate about, food additives and things like that. I think, I think there's a lot of, good intention and, we all want to eat less additives and things like that. So in a perfect world, we could have all organic food, but without pesticides and preservatives, things will go bad quicker as well. So I don't know if I would say that the media has overblown it. I think for every, article or opinion you have that we should all be organic, there's another opinion, that it's everything in moderation. So, I certainly don't buy all organic because it's too pricey, but I do familiarize myself and educate myself as far as, which items, tend to use the most pesticides and things like that, and try and buy those specific items organic when I can.
What do you think about websites that offer non-perfect food items for sale?
So, I think that's great. We're saving on food waste. Those things would usually go into a landfill. They're usually cheaper. Nutritionally, there's no difference. So that's certainly a great option. And it's, it's great to see that there's, a market for those.
Do you have a recommendation on a specific oil to use for cooking?
So, there's lots of information on all different oils. So probably the easiest, most reliable, and easiest to find that has shown health benefits is olive oil. Budget-wise, it's still a little bit high. And it has what we call a low smoking point. So cooking anything at a high temperature with olive oil, it'll burn, and it's not great to use. You know, there's controversy over canola oil, although, you know, as a rule, it's okay, but there are, you know, there is some concern that it can lead to additional inflammation. Although, like I said, you know, looking at the health wise and heart health, it's a good choice. Corn oil is actually a little bit better than vegetable oil. There's been studies that show corn oil helps with cholesterol, similar to canola oil. And then, you know, your more expensive things like avocado oil and walnut oil and things like that are obviously good too. So yeah, it's.
Would you say it's more cost effective to buy fruits and vegetables whole and then peel, chop them yourself, or would it be cheaper to buy them like already prepared?
Yeah. So good question. Like anything, like with the chicken too, you're better off buying it and putting the time in yourself, because you're paying for the labor of cutting, you know, washing and cutting and the extra packaging. If you buy, you know, your celery all cut up, or things like zucchini spirals. I love, and I bought a spiralizer. It's still sitting there. I haven't done it yet. It's so much easier to buy them already spiralized. So it's, you know, it's kind of weighing what's works for you, what's important for you. Do you have the time? If you don't have the time and you buy the fruits or the vegetables with all good intention and they go bad, then you're not getting the benefit of them. And you're either nutritionally by ingesting them or budget wise. So, you know, it's all, you know, kind of weighing pros and cons. If you're gonna, you know, buy the broccoli all chopped and washed and you're gonna use it, then by all means, you know, it may be worth in the long run buying it that way.
I love this next question. Do you have an opinion on air fryers?
Not really. So, I know a lot of people use them and think they're great. I personally haven't had any personal experience. So, you know, the idea of them and, you know, the recipes that I've seen and everything, it sounds like they're a great option. Just remember, just because something is cooked in the air fryer, it doesn't mean it's lost any calories. So, you know, French fries in an air fryer are still French fries. You know, if you buy them frozen, they've already had some oil there. So whether you cook them in the air fryer or roast them in the oven isn't really going to make a difference health-wise. Now, if you normally had a deep fat fryer and fried your fries or your food that way, you know, there's a big difference. Okay, so I just want to thank everybody for attending. These are some of the websites that you may find helpful. The Eat Right website is the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics website. That gives you information on nutrition, all different topics. I'd give a plug to Rutgers. They have Wellness Wednesdays, which are webinars, and actually they're one in a week or two is going to be on a similar topic as far as budget and menu planning, and they're all archived, so you can go back and they're wonderful. The American Heart Association, heart.com, is a nice handout on, has a nice grocery list to follow and shopping ideas and recipes, some food safety references. Flip.com is the website or the app that allows you to kind of compare prices in the area. And then the last is our New Jersey site, where you can get information on how to apply for food resource programs like food stamps, if you're interested in that. Okay, thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you everyone so much for joining us for this webinar. Thank you, Susan, for all the information. If you ever needed to make a medical appointment, please visit us at henryjaustin.org to make an appointment there. Follow us on social media. And then if you're local in the community, we're actually holding a health fair event for Health Center Week tomorrow across from our Warren location, 321 North Warren, from 3 to 6 p.m. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.